it can probably seem a little bit overwhelming. And I don't know if anyone has any questions. Feel free to send them on the chat function. We have a couple of minutes. I know it's 8 o'clock. We don't want to keep everyone too long because it gets late into the evening. But if there are a couple of questions, by all means, there's an opportunity to throw a couple Kerry's way. But I mean, I look at it and I think it's inspiring on the one hand, probably to hear all this information and the power that we have in the dental community to be able to make a difference for patients that we don't necessarily stop to think of every day in our typical practice. At the
No.
same time, I can think that there's probably a lot of people that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed and intimidated as to how do I incorporate some of this into what I'm doing to be able to actually educate patients on this. And how do you address that when you get that question? I think you kind of touched a little bit at the end of your presentation, do it in little bite-sized chunks.
It
But
really has to be bite-sized chunks and choosing one small change. We have changed so much in dentistry with COVID. We've had to pivot 110%. And a lot of us still are unsure when we go in and what patients are going to ask. But choosing one small thing to incrementally change your practice. So if you are passionate and you want to say, okay, the diabetes patients, those are the ones we're going to focus on the most when we're screening them. Let's make sure we select those particular patients with health history. Choose something you're comfortable with, because you might choose diabetes and someone else might say, no, it's cardiovascular disease for me. Find something you're passionate about and just focus on that. Try one or two people a day to educate them, to bring in this link to show them that you care and why you're different. And that's the easiest way to do it. You can't change your protocols overnight. And that's why I try to lay it out a little bit for you with the different options you have. And some of them you may be doing and some of them you may not. So just do it in bite-sized pieces and incrementally you will get to where you want to be.
and one of the things I was thinking as I was listening to your presentation with respect to that is, obviously this is not something you address with every patient because the patients are not all going to report with some of the conditions that you outline. So you don't necessarily set aside time up front for conditions that you haven't seen because maybe you're just not familiar with what's going on. And even if it's an existing patient that you've had for a while, that we know health changes sometimes, and we've got them in for our typical appointment, and we're looking at then we see signs and we're thinking, okay, I have to do a little bit more based on the bite-sized chunk I've chosen. Do you prefer to do it, set up another follow-up appointment with the patient? Would you prefer to do that in person? Would you maybe start thinking in terms of a teledentistry platform as we're embracing new technologies as a result of COVID? What's sort of your comfort level in terms of how you look at that?
That's a really good question. So I am very good, and I've learned to be very good on my initial sort of 15 minutes in that appointment when I'm evaluating their health history and I see things just don't add up. I make a decision very quickly then about either having them back for a reevaluation, which would be a second appointment, or let's say splitting their cleaning up into two appointments. Or I will say, listen, I'm going to call you and I'm going to follow up because I've done quite a bit of teledentistry now because it's really hard for us, and the cost of having them come in is so high that we have done a lot of teledentistry and I've checked in and said, listen, has this improved? What are you noticing a difference with? Let's do an evaluation this way. And people can take pictures of their mouth and email them to us and we can see it that way. So we can really track how they've truly improved or not. So I think embracing the Zoom connections, embracing whatever connection you feel comfortable communicating with your patients, but it really has made a big difference for sure.
I mean, that was just an easy pop into my mind because I know a lot of dentists are kind of looking at seeing all these promotional pieces coming up for teledentistry platforms, and they're thinking, is it something I'd really use? And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, this is that ideal time because, as you said, if this is a patient coming in now and it's been an unanticipated situation, and I know I'm going to want to address it, and I'm not going to have time in the appointment that I've set aside to fully explore the options in a way that is going to convey compassion and concern without conveying fear.
Yes. Yes. As you will say, you don't want to scare your patient, you want to care. And so if you see that deer in the headlights, as I
Yeah.
use you all the time, that deer in the headlights, it's like, I promise you, I wasn't trying to scare you. I was trying to show you I cared. And one way that I find really helpful to get people to understand why I'm concerned, I'll say to them, listen, Think of your car and taking it to a car wash. You've got three options. You've got a touchless, you've got the exterior, and you have a full detail. The problem is you're asking me to do a cleaning and I'm only able to do a touchless. But what you need is that detail. That's not going to be done, and I can't get it all done today. If you're not ready to go ahead with that sort of care, I understand. Let's do what we can today and we'll talk more about it the next time. And sometimes, just like talking about a crown, people need one or two conversations before they're ready to accept it or move forward. So it doesn't mean that you failed. Just try a different way of presenting the care. And that's why the mechanic conversation, the car wash conversation are very my go-to kind of analogies that seem to resonate with a lot of people.
It reminds me of listening to Dr. Paul Homily speaking in
Yeah.
terms of case presentation, because it's that idea that, as you said, you don't look at it as a sign that you failed because the patient didn't accept it right there in that first appointment. If you've created a connection
Mhm.
and let that patient understand, this is what I'm concerned about, but my concern's not going to stop the minute you walk out the door. I will remain concerned for you,
Mhm.
and I'm available, and we can discuss it when you're ready.
Yeah.
I think that's a big aspect of creating that connection, that bond of trust.
And I think another way that I'll approach situations like that when I really know that they should do something, sometimes I'll say to them, especially with COVID, listen, it sounds like you've had a lot on your plate. Are you at a spot where you're ready to look after you? Or are you just being here because you're trying to do the best you can? And that way, then they're open to say, you know what, Carrie, I don't even have a moment to myself. This hour with you is my free time. So I'm not interested and I'm not open to it now. And by asking it that way, they're not feeling bad. And then eventually they say, okay, I'm ready. And I say, when you're ready, you let me know and we will make sure we reduce these. But I'm proud of you for coming in. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. Let's do what we can.
And I love that, because you're providing recognition. The
Mhm.
patient is there. I mean, this is a even independent of a pandemic, life is a busy endeavor, right? I
Yep.
mean, we're always going crazy, and this is just added something new to it. So to be able to find a way to make a patient feel good about themselves
Mhm.
for doing what they can, even if you know that I'd really like to see you do more.
Yeah. Yep.
But there's times that you have to recognize you're just not going to win that discussion in the moment, and that sometimes it's the proverbial being in it for the marathon as opposed to being in it for the sprint.
Yep, exactly. And if they have that trust and connection, they are more likely to be open to it at a period of time. And those three lines have really been some of the best. I've got the best results with them and the best connection. And patients, if you provide service this way and they understand that you're looking at it differently, people don't cancel their appointments. They want to keep their appointments. They know that you're going the extra mile. They know you're different than the $99 cleanings down the street, or the free new patient exam and whitening. They know that. And so this is a great way to differentiate yourself and your team. And it's refreshing. And for us, if you could practice in an area where you're educating patients, it's exciting. You get to share your knowledge and your excitement, your passion. And if you can get them healthy at the same time, let me tell you, my risk of going to work is mitigated. I don't have a huge concern in dealing with perio disease all day long of active. People are healthy because they understand, and we're in it to win it together.
And I mean, I listen to what you say there, and I'm thinking, those of you watching, whether you're watching live right now or where you're catching this on the video afterwards, that's just part of the coaching that Kerry can provide for you. It's not just about the clinical aspect and the great information and knowledge that Kerry has from the scientific side of things that she can share. It's this ability to be able to take that science that, let's face it, I mean, the average patient isn't going to have the full scientific background to understand, and bring it to a level so that they can understand it and coach them along so that everybody feels comfortable in the discussions that have to be had in order to address these conditions the right way. So, Kerry, if anyone needed to reach out to you, let's give them one final reminder. What's the best way that they can contact you?
Okay, the best way to contact me is K, and then I'll spell my last name, Lepicek at gmail.com.
Can you, I think, oh, are you there?
Oh, did I
Yeah, I
pause?
think you might have froze. Can you just, yeah, it froze just right at the end there, just before you spelled your name and then at something.com.
Okay, so KLEPICEK@gmail.com.
Excellent. We got it in. The joys of technology, right?
I know, exactly. Freeze.